Hello, I'm delighted to join you virtually for today's conference. Previously, we would have attended such events in person and we'd have all been in the same room discussing this work and future projects. But we're living in different times, I don't need to tell you, and we've had to adapt to events being held through screens. But it's really important this does not dampen our enthusiasm or our drive to tackle issues, even more so against the backdrop of a global health pandemic. So, to start with, I'm going to say a few words about my role as PCC and my priority about how we can tackle domestic abuse together. So as the Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset, I'm elected by local people to be their voice in policing. I was elected in 2012 and re-elected for a second term in May 2016. After 8 years in office and with an election planned for May 2020, I was planning on standing down. But coronavirus has changed all our plans and they've been postponed to 21. So I made the decision to stay on and to continue to support local people during this uncertain times. I remain one of only a handful of police crime commissioners who are female and even fewer independents. So what do? I'm the bridge between local people and the police. So I listen to victims and organisations. I hold the Chief Constable to account and set the priorities for the police part of the Police and Crime Plan. And I have a role in commissioning victim services across Avon and Somerset. And I set the policing part of the council tax. So my priority has always been protecting the most vulnerable from harm. It's my number one priority. From the very start of my journey as PCC, I was determined to be a fierce advocate for victims and their families and to shout loudly about this. Listening to victims and survivors reaches every part of mine and my team and the police's work. How can we prevent a person from becoming a victim? How can we stop perpetrators from reoffending? And how can we help victims and survivors cope and recover, or even try to recover from their experiences? Our objectives within this priority include identifying victims and those at risk of victimisation, ensuring the provision of effective services to enable victims to cope, ensuring the provision of effective preventative approaches, and ensuring organisations, including the police, provide an effective victim-centred response and identify offenders who are going to be abusing our victims. So we need to work with and meet those objectives, and most importantly to help victims. So why domestic abuse? This has been at the heart of the priorities that I have discussed. So why is DA such an important issue for me? Because it's a concern for everyone. We all know how complex DA can be. It can impact the whole family. It can happen to any agenda, to any race, to any age, in any type of relationship, and in any location. We know that a relationship can look happy from the outside, but behind closed doors, abuse can be taking place. It can be affecting our neighbour, our loved one, our friend, and there are still too many people falling victim. I want to quickly mention some statistics that I think show how prevalent DA is. Almost 1 in 3 women will experience DA in their lifetime. 2 women a week are killed by a current or former partner. 500,000 men were victims of partner abuse in 2018. Nearly half of those male victims fail to tell anyone they're a victim of DA. And in Avon and Somerset, 29,000 individuals in the police system are vulnerable. Just think, 29,000. We know that many victims will not report DA. We know many will not come forward. We know many will not feel supported enough to leave the abusive environment. So it's our duty to be their voice. We need a multi-agency, holistic approach to work with victims, family and perpetrators, and to make sure these are just not words. We need to continue to develop projects and initiatives to prevent abuse and help victims and their families recover from their experience. We need to listen to the experiences of those brave enough to come forward. And there may only just be one window of opportunity to help that victim. We must grasp it and prevent further harm. As well as supporting these victims, we need to understand their experiences to help reach other potential victims. We need to shout about the victim services available to victims and survivors so they know that there are charity organisations and people who will not judge them, not tell them what to do, but will listen and help. We need to be transparent regarding the service they will receive from the police if they want to report, while emphasising that they do not need to report to get access for support. So, I want to take the time to talk about some of the ongoing work that my team, the police and other partners are doing to support victims of DA and ensure we are safeguarding them and their families. As part of my role as Police and Crime Commissioner, I commission and co-commission numerous victim services across Avon and Somerset. Effective support services are central to enabling victims to cope and recover. These services can be accessed whether the victim reports to the police and no matter how long ago that crime took place. We know that domestic abuse doesn't just occur between spouse and spouse. It can happen to anyone, from any background and in any type of relationship. We have numerous services in place to ensure people from all walks of life can access help and be supported, including NextLink and SafeLink, who offer ISVA and IDVA services respectively, including dedicated support for victims with learning disabilities and from BME communities. Swan Advocacy, who offer advocacy to individuals with protected characteristics. The Young Victim Service, who support child victims, including those in DA environments. Mankind, who offer help to male victims and DA. So I want to show you a video from SafeLink discussing about the role of independent sexual violence advisors, why victims should come forward, and the support they offer.
SafeLink is a team of independent sexual violence advisors, and we work with men, women and children who've survived any form of sexual violence throughout their life. So it could be that you are a survivor or victim of rape or sexual assault in the past as a child or at some point in your past, or it's something that's happened recently. It could be that you want to report to the police, or you absolutely don't want to report to the police, or you just want to know what your options and what your rights are. And SafeLink service, the ISVAs, are there to support you and your family going forward. The whole point of the service is that we're completely independent from any other statutory or voluntary service, and we're there to inform you of what your choices are, what the options are, what support is available, so that you make all the decisions going forward, so that you feel more empowered throughout that process. So we're here for anyone who needs any form of support around rape or sexual assault. The whole point of providing ISVA support is about giving people and letting them know about what their options and what their choices are. So it's finding out for them, what do they want to happen, how do they want to move forward. It's a range of emotional support and practical support as well. So we've had some victims come through the service where they might contact us and they're struggling to leave their house, for example, and they needed some support to find out local community groups that the ISVA could link them up with. And so for that first group, the ISVA went down there, helped her to leave her house and attend that group work, and then bit by bit building forward, she was able to start to do that on her own. So that's just an example of the kind of practical support that we want to offer people, so that they can go on living fulfilled lives and engage in everything that they deserve to engage with. It could be that they need some emotional support, they want to find out about other services that are available, they want to find out what their options are with the police going forward. Do they want to report? What is the best way that they want to report? Is that anonymous, or do they want us to help arrange an appointment with the police to make a statement, for example? So it really is a victim-led service, and it's about what that victim and survivor needs going forward.
It's a real privilege to be able to get to know someone on over a really long period of time, and to see someone from the very start who might be like incredibly anxious, not sure who they can trust, not able to talk very easily, not able to even look you in the eye sometimes, and then to sort of build on their strengths and to recognise that everyone has amazing parts of them and interesting things that people might not know, and to sort of build on that and empower them to feel stronger, and to see that change over time is really amazing.
The greatest thing about being an ISVA is being able to support a victim or survivor through their journey of recovery. It's being able to give them a safe space to express themselves and to understand what has happened to them, As an ISVA, you support them and give them information, impartial information about their choices, and it's giving them the autonomy to make that choice, to feel like they've got control of their life once again, and seeing that the victim or survivor grow and become an independent person is highly rewarding. That's the greatest thing about being an ISVA.
That they will be listened to, their choices will be respected, and that they will be believed, that they can have someone answer the phone who is kind, who is caring, who understands about the impact that it has had on them in their lives, and will listen to that and will respect their choices and what they want to happen going forward, but most importantly that they will be believed and listened to.
Amazing work. As I've mentioned, my police and crime plan outlines priorities and the strategic direction for the police. In terms of the police figures, DA has seen an upward trend for some time. Changes to automation and recording practices has meant an additional increase in DA cases, which was expected. But it is clear that these recording practices do not account for the ongoing high volume of DA incidents, calls for service and recorded crime. Take a recent week in September, there were 664 referrals into Lighthouse Safeguarding Unit for DA, and for the police, 410 recorded DA crimes in the same week. These figures show that there are still too many local people becoming victims of awful crime. The police service take a victim-centred approach to tackling DA and are continuously improving their understanding of need, demand, and identifying victims of abuse when called out to incidents. And when we talk about DA, we're not referring to physical abuse that just leaves bruises and cuts. Emotional and psychological abuse can be just as damaging, if not more, and this can extend to a much wider family. Coercive and controlling behaviour is now embedded as a crime, clearly signalling that Avon and Somerset Police recognise that DA is not just about violence. Officers are receiving training on understanding and recognising controlling and coercive behaviour, as well as stalking and harassment. So moving on, we know that domestic violence seriously impacts children who may witness it. For example, research has found that there is a significant relationship between childhood exposure to domestic violence and future behavioural problems such as violence and aggression. Violence has repercussions that extend beyond those immediately affected and has further implications for generations to come. So with the 5 violence reduction units across Avon and Somerset, including South Gloucestershire and one in Bristol, we aim to take a public health approach in reducing the amount of lives lost and damaged due to serious violence. And it can be challenging working in 5 different ways, but this approach gives us the opportunity to really listen to our partners and communities on the ground. We will continue to work with local residents and our young people to find out what they need, and we will strive to achieve this by working together. So by taking action together, we can protect the most vulnerable in our communities from becoming victims. We can stop young people from being exploited, and we can find solutions to support those at risk of being drawn into a life of violence. Undoubtedly, the much-needed national lockdown in spring because of CV-19 has impacted DA victims and survivors. Victims and their families were living with perpetrators 24/7 with limited contact with the outside world. Initially, lockdown did not see an increase in demand for the police in relation to DA as one might have expected. However, the demand on victim services has continued to remain high, with both local and national helplines and organisations showing a high volume of contact throughout the pandemic. And there were noticeable spikes in demand for services such as NextLink, indicating a higher than usual need. We saw how options such as NextLink's live chat became an important opportunities for victims and survivors to reach out for support. We heard of one survivor where it was only when their partner was asleep could they find a window of opportunity to make contact. And that individual was not alone. After speaking to some of our commissioned services, I know that the abuse also intensified and became more violent during lockdown. And in addition to this, our dedicated services had to find new ways of working while continuing to deliver advocacy, emotional and psychological support during the pandemic. They still need to be in contact with victims and survivors who might not have left their environment or relationship while safeguarding them at all times. It was an enormous challenge, but I'm immensely proud of them and their commitment to deliver the best possible support. The global health pandemic also highlighted again the need to have a collective approach of tackling this devastating crime. Strategy groups, which some of you will have attended, were set up to orchestrate a joined-up communication response across Avon and Somerset. Local authorities, partners, the police and my team all utilised the Home Office You Are Not Alone campaign, so local people knew what to do, where to go and who to contact if they or someone they knew was a victim of DA. And by connecting with each other, feeding into each other's plans and sharing ideas, the powerful, sustainable message is DA victims are not alone. With the pandemic still ongoing, probably into a second wave, and possible increase in restrictions, the concern of DA during coronavirus has not disappeared. We must all continue to be vigilant at least for the next 6 months and consider how we collectively reach those isolated and how we can give them the confidence to come forward. So I've said throughout my discussion that we need a collective and holistic approach to tackle this abuse. This approach also needs to include working with perpetrators. I know to some this might seem like a controversial step, but if it stops reoffending and prevents further abuse from taking place, it is a much needed approach. It's an opportunity to also change the question from why didn't she leave to why didn't he stop. Currently, less than 1% of DA perpetrators receive a specialist intervention to change or be challenged. 1 in 4 perpetrators are repeat offenders, such as many as 6 victims. This is unacceptable. Something needs to change, and we need to be meeting the needs of the victims through challenging the behaviours of offenders. We need to stop putting the onus on victim to make the first move, whether that's reporting or leaving the house or relationship, and put the responsibility back onto the offender. My team and I will be working through Drive, an intensive initiative that works with high harm and serial perpetrators to challenge their behaviour. Drive offers an evidence-led approach that targets abuse behaviour to stop the cycle of reoffending and increase victim and survivor safety. It uses a holistic multi-agency approach to work with perpetrators to change their behaviour, as well as utilising disruption techniques to prevent the reoffending. And we will be working with Drive over the coming weeks to launch a rollout of the scheme in certain areas. We'll be hosting a virtual strategic stakeholder event with Q&A in mid-October. So if this is something you'd like to attend, please contact my office. And before we come to a close, I want to play a short video of a victim talking about her experience.
Hello Phoebe, thanks for coming to join us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm called Phoebe, I'm 20 years old and I'm studying music at university in Bristol. I'm in my final year now, I've got a few months left. Yeah, I was assaulted about 2 years ago now when I was 18, and I finally have been to court and had justice for it, which is brilliant. So yeah.
Great. Can you tell us how you first contacted SafeLink?
Yeah, well I reported the incident to the police and then I had like a few interviews with them and stuff, and then they referred me on to an ISVA with SafeLink, and then she introduced me to a support group which I went to for I think it was about 8 or 10 weeks, like every week, and there was like a group of girls, and I think there was about 6 of us in the support group, and it was sort of just about like supporting each other and talking through what had happened, but you didn't have to like go into detail about things if you didn't want to, but it was just sort of knowing that there were other girls that are going through the same things or have been through the same things that you could talk to.
And how did your ISVA support you?
Well, she came with me to court, which was great because I had my family and friends there, which was amazing, but they've not been through it and they are not really aware of how the court works or the court process, understandably. So having someone there that had worked with me for the past 2 years and actually knew what was going on and could sort of explain things, so we could all just focus on like the emotional side of things rather than actually knowing who was who and what was happening, so it was very useful.
Okay, and how would you describe where you are in your life now after going through something so awful?
Yeah.
And having the support from SafeLink, where would you say that you are now?
I'm so happy now. I genuinely think if I hadn't been to SafeLink, I would not be this happy now. I was like depressed, I was such a mess before, and like it's just so lovely having people that know what you're going through and can help you. It's really nice. Yeah, they've helped a lot.
Fantastic. So what would you say to someone who's clicked on a link today and seen this on a website? What would you say to someone who's asking for help?
that please contact SafeLink. It's the best thing that ever happened to me, and I think that, you know, if you or someone else has been through this awful ordeal, is going through it now, you need the help. And I think, especially if people don't have that support network of family or friends, it's so lovely to have people that are just there for you. And it's so lovely because I feel like they genuinely care. It's not as if it's just a job, it's like they actually care about me, which is great.
Thank you, Phoebe. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for listening to me this morning. I hope these projects show that by working together in this way, we can make a change and improve outcomes for victims of DA. The Domestic Abuse Bill currently being discussed in the House of Lords will be a landmark piece of legislation that will further solidify our definition and understanding of domestic abuse. The bill will place a greater obligation on agencies to respond effectively to prevent and manage DA. We are all taking steps in the right direction, but so much more can be done. If you have any views or ideas of how we can continue to work closely to tackle this traumatic crime, please do get in touch. We are stronger together. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.